Good afternoon, everybody. Fergus Dolan here from NALA. Delighted to have you here this afternoon for our webinar on change through blended learning and the flipped ESOL classroom. And we're delighted to have Ana Marques. Ana is an ESOL tutor and trainer with Limerick and Clare ETB. Hi, Ana.
Hi, how are you?
And my colleague Aoife Mulhall will be helping me with technology, etc. Hi, Aoife. So I'll hand you over to Ana. Ana, all the best and good luck.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. You're all very welcome. Let me just show you here what I'm going to be doing today with you. I'm going to have just, I was saying before that to Fergus and to Aoife that I'm so used to using Teams now that I need a little bit of rewiring in my head with regards to Zoom, but hopefully everything will go fine. I'm sure it will. Okay, so if we go, here it is. And let me just move that over there. I don't know if you can see, I'm going to minimize it. That's okay. No, just like that, maybe. Okay. Can you see it okay, everybody?
That's good, Ana. Yeah, we can see the presentation.
Okay. So the topic that Fergus suggested was change through blended learning and the flipped classroom. Well, a lot of things have happened that we know of for the last 2 years, and there's no need to go over them. So there was a little bit of blending going on before the lockdowns, but obviously there is more and more going on now. So what I intend covering today is just checking here, are the pictures here in the way? Are all of us? Well, I put it down here.
No, we can see the screen clearly. We can see your presentation really clearly.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So this is the what I would like to cover today in this order. What's blended learning, what's a flipped classroom, the traditional versus the flipped classroom, the online teaching and learning, both synchronous and asynchronous, hybrid, a tiny wee mention about HyFlex. What is the focus of a flipped classroom, the key aspects, our role as teachers or educators or learning practitioners, whatever term you prefer, and the learners' tasks, how to make a classroom more effective. And I will show you the picture of the updated version or revised version of the Bloom's taxonomy. I will give you, I will show a template of a class plan, and I have 3 examples of 3 different levels at A2, B2, and C1 levels. Resources, and I added suggestions because they're more suggestions than anything else. We all know, we all have different opinions about different things, and actually one of the screenshots that I put down there has a few of the things that I tend to use quite a lot, but it was just an idea. Okay, so about myself, before I find out a little bit about you, I'll tell you about myself. I work, as Fergus said earlier, for the LCTB, so I'm trying to wear my my strap in there. I am based in County Clare. This year I'm working for 2 provisions, VTOS and Core Skills. And over the years I have delivered language modules, work experience, tourism, math applications, health and safety, etc. I'm also an external authenticator. I am a member of the TEL Champions, like some of you are watching now. Our goal is to bring technology into teaching the best way possible and as user-friendly as possible. It's a big task, a big endeavor, but before we were called TEL Champions, we were called Moodle Champions, and we started with Moodle, but then we've also introduced Teams. So it's pretty much work in progress, but we are pretty much ahead in many ways than other ETBs, I must say, and it's thanks to all the colleagues that are really, really putting a lot of work into it. I'm also a member of the subject matter expert panel with QQI. And the purpose of this panel is to put together standardization of the NFQ standards that we have in Ireland, together with what we call the CFR, which stands for the Common European Framework for reference with regards to languages. So we've been working for the last few years, and our work at the moment is being reviewed. It wasn't the only subject that was in the panel. There are different areas like science, math, etc. But we were told from the very beginning, we didn't really need to be told that ours, being the language, was the most challenging one, because we're dealing with a lot of different languages, not just ESOL. Okay. I also do assessments for learning differences, or learning difficulties. The latest term is differences. And I also like to assess people's learning, but not from the standardized VAK, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, but from the perspective of how they perceive and process information. In other words, trying to be taught the way we learn. Anyway, that's for another day. My babies, in inverted commas, in the LCTB is introduction of rubrics for assessment. Some of you might have heard about it. I know that some of you have, because I've been working with ye. And it's a way to, among other things, make sure that no matter who teaches modules, when we have people teaching, several colleagues teaching the same module, the results, the marking, it's goes across the board. It's rated equally, fairly, and with no doubt about whether things were overlooked or not. It requires a lot of work behind the scenes, but once we have it, once we crack it, we're on. And another thing that I love to work on is Kahoot. Some of you will have heard about it. All right, Kahoot. It's really, really interactive, really engaging. It's a great example for UDL, for Universal Design for Learning. And even though I use the one where you don't pay for, I mean, you can take a lot of advantage with Kahoots as a pre-task to check where people are at, and as an after to see how much people remember. I have taught in 3 different countries, and I started my working life as a substitute teacher for maternity leave 38 years ago. And on the personal level, I'm married to a Kerry man, and I have a 30-year-old girl, woman, Deirdre. She lives now in Iceland, and I have a son, 26. He was born in Tralee, and he's actually studying now in the LCTB as well. So that's me in a nutshell. So what I would like you to do, if you don't mind, is I like to find out a little bit about you, and the way I've done it, and I think if I will put it up there on the chat, the easiest thing is that you go to and click on the link, okay? And I'm going to show you what it looks like, all right? So just bear with me. I'm going to share this. And when you click on the link, you should see this. I hope you do. Okay. And here in this so-called Padlet, it's once you know how to work it, and it's pretty user-friendly, really. I'm going to work on the assumption that very few of you will be familiar with Padlet. So just bear in mind that there are a couple more questions that the ones you can see on the screen. When you go yourselves at the very, very bottom, you can scroll the bar. There are 7 questions in total. And the only thing you have to do is, once you have that link open, you click on the plus and you just put in your comment. Okay. It's anonymous, as you can see. All right. So the questions are: have you heard of the term flipped classroom before? Do you do blended teaching and learning? Give 1 adjective. Here I am using a grammatical term to describe what blended teaching and learning means to you. Do you do synchronous and or asynchronous teaching and learning, or both? Also, then you have how many years you've been teaching ESOL, but that is just to see, you know, the audience that I have, and what levels are you or have you been teaching? Okay, and I can see a lot of what is going on in here, which is great. Okay. Okay. So it's a bit of everything. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like everybody's familiarized with the term flipped classroom, at least from what I have here. You can see what I'm seeing. Well, you probably can't see what I'm what you see because you're looking at the live Padlet, whereas I'm looking at all the comments. Okay. So yeah, everybody says yes to blended, especially since COVID. Yep. Okay. Adjective, varied, mix, varied, flexible. Okay. Asynchronous and asynchronous. Yep, both. 15 before I move back to the ETB. Okay, all right. And let me just see here. Okay. Yes, 20 years plus. Okay, I'm scrolling now to see the levels you're at. Okay, A2, B2. Okay, 4, 5 last year. Okay, literacy, yes. Yeah. In terms of the literacy, beforehand, we had people they would just learn ESOL as such because of work or for other reasons, but on account of people that have come from countries further afield than Europe, then there is a literacy issue because they might not have been literate in their own countries. So that's an added challenge that we have. Yeah, mixed levels and keeping everybody interested. Yeah, interested in the topic. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I have enough information here. I shall be able to see afterwards, you know, once we're all finished, the background of the audience today for future reference. Okay, but I'm not seeing anything that I haven't seen already. I have been in your place many times before, and yeah, I think every year we have extra challenges added to the whole thing. Never a dull moment here. Okay, all right. My student does not seem to have, okay, seem to have any, okay. Yeah, okay, literacy and assessment. We have a rather good group colleagues in Ennis. I forgot to mention where I'm. Yes, at County Clare. I'm based between. I'm 3 days or 3 mornings in Ennis, 2 afternoons in Shannon, and then 1 morning where I'm right now in Kilrush in West Clare. And yeah, in Ennis in particular, we have a group that is getting increasingly bigger, dealing with ESOL and literacy together. So we are distinguishing between groups that are doing ESOL with literacy, and then we have separate groups that are just ESOL because they don't have any literacy issues. Okay, all right. So thank you very much for all your input here. I mean, if you want to add some more while I'm working, you know, when I'm talking through something else, the next slide, that'll be fine. Okay. So let me just go back to my slides here, my PowerPoint. Okay, so just a second there now. And I have it ready here now. Okay. Okay, the Padlet here is getting in the way. Come on, share. I'm trying to share this here and it won't let me. Okay, 1 second now. Every time I want to click on share, something happens. The Padlet comes on. Okay. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Okay.
Have you totally closed up your Padlet?
Okay, I have closed my Padlet, yes.
Yeah.
And
You're
hopefully
back now.
I'm back where I was, right? Hopefully.
Right.
Okay, here we go. What is blended learning? So from the current slide. Okay, yay, I'm here. You can see this okay, yeah?
Yes.
Right, okay, beautiful, thank you. Well, before we tackle blended learning and the flipped classroom in the ESOL context, obviously we have to know where we stand. So blended learning, as you know, combines face-to-face. You know, we have a lot of new terms since the pandemic. We used to say being in the classroom, now we call it F2F, face-to-face. And also we use online by posting, by sending emails or working with Teams or Moodle, for example, and then using mobile technologies like, for example, the phone. All my learners have smartphones, but you know, they do what they normally do. So now they know how to use Kahoot on the phone, for example, and a few other things as well. Every single piece of information that I have on the slides, be it a quote or a picture, has a link to it. So once I'm sure these slides are shared with you, you just have to go and click on it and you'll get the source for where this comes from. As you can see, the term blended learning was already taking place in 1998. Okay, so goes way, way back. The flipped classroom started a little bit later in terms of being called like that. It's a pedagogical model, as you know, and a lot of the pictures that you get about flipped classroom is usually pictures upside down or things like that, right? Which is quite funny. And the idea, as you know, is rather than give the spiel in class face to face and then give the homework, shall we say, the traditional way, we give information beforehand, as in what you should have read or watched before the actual class. So the time that we spend in class, as you know, is more fruitful because we already know what it is about. And then we have more time then to solve questions or discuss the topic. I have this pretty fresh in my head because I just finished a one-year course with the NCI and I was at the receiving end of it. So you really do engage, even if you expect to engage every day. It could be just maybe once a week, but we certainly do engage one way or another. And this one, yes, as I said before, it was invented in 2007. Then we have, as you can see here, and the source is right there, a contrast. Okay, you can see the difference between the so-called lecture-based approach, which is the traditional way. Okay, the students come to class, the teachers give the spiel. I have had students in the past that would tell me that a history teacher would come to class, open the book and just read from the book. And there they were, the most boring, annoying thing really and they were wondering, you know, what's the point in coming to class if it's just reading the book? I can read the book at home, you know. Then what happens in class and what happens after class. Whereas with the flipped classroom, as you know, a lot of it happens before the class. Okay, a lot of preparation. And then if sometimes you don't have time to do things, then when the class begins, then you realize quickly that maybe I should have done this, and you know, or at the same time, there could be areas that you know about already, and you don't need to spend that much time on it, which is also good. So here is just a screenshot there. I'm visual, pretty much visual. For those of you who are visual, will love it. For those of you who are less visual, we'll have to process that a little bit. But that's mainly the difference between synchronous class, so all of that going on, and asynchronous. I've had to do that a few times if I had an appointment or the learners were I had an excursion, a trip, or something like that. I would put stuff on Teams, and as if we had the class. Okay, and they like that too. And then this is the more or less the layout of what happens when we have a hybrid class, which I've been doing for the last year and a bit. Now, hybrid, okay, beyond the terms in biology, has to do with having a synchronous class, so that is a class taking place in real time. Some of the learners are in the classroom, so face to face, and some of the learners who can't make it or for whatever reason are in class, but through technology, through the laptop. In my case, it's the laptop that I bring with me. I've had learners that couldn't find what they were looking for in terms of a module in Wexford in particular, and they found out that in Clare was taking place, so they're registered through the PLSS like everything else, like everybody else in any ETB, but she is all the way in Wexford. I have a learner who started, she was an au pair here. She's German, was an au pair here in Ireland. She went away to study in university in Austria, and she is still with us. And when she hooks up with us, she's all the way in Austria in her room. And she came this year before St. Patrick's, and she's leaving on Saturday. And she surprised us by turning up in class for the first time. So we met her face to face. So it was lovely to see her in the flesh, literally. And so now, you know, it was we were connected nonetheless, but it was lovely to see her there. The term of hybrid started in 2000, and it's quite not tiring, that wouldn't be the right word because I'm selling this to you. But you, what you can do is you can have everything prepared, say on Teams, which is the platform that we use now, and have everything ready for the learners that are online. So while I'm showing something on the board, sometimes I turn the laptop around so they can see the board. But some other times maybe the board, it gets a little bit too awkward. So they have the information. They just have to click on the documents that are uploaded on Teams while the class is actually looking at the projector. I have put there a little bit of this HyFlex. That's the latest term that I've come across. Not that long. I came across, I think, about a year ago already. And what HyFlex implies is a combination of three things. There is it's asynchronous. There is an interaction online. The learners can choose how they can engage. And the Zoom, for example, is used to make it synchronous for any questions that they might have. And sometimes the class can meet face-to-face if needed be, not necessarily the full class. It's not a pick and choose, but it's different ways the learner can engage in the course. So everybody will be at the same pace, everybody will be liaising. And there are 4 principles that go with this. As I said, the learner can choose how to engage in the course. And there are 3 other principles, but this is for another day. But just for you to know what this HyFlex is about. And this HyFlex term was, even though I came across it a year ago, it was already registered as such in 2006. Okay. Okay, what do we focus on when we're dealing with the flipped classroom? We focus on active learning. I'm going to use all the buzzwords that you've heard in many times in different webinars that you've been to, I'm sure. Active learning, being interactive, in terms of ESOL, the production of new vocabulary, new language, cognitive skills, and this is something that I'm always, even when I started teaching a long time ago, last century, I always wanted to work on the cognitive side of things. And a lot of the times the teaching does not give us a chance to do so unless you are somehow, as they label you, being academic. And I have issues with the term academic, because what does academic mean? You're sitting behind the chair and you're really focused on this and the other, but some other people might be a bit more restless. They might need motion, they might need to move around, but they're reading and studying as much as anybody else that is behind, looking really, really focused on everything. So That's why I have problems with the word academic, but that's my thing. The learners engage by creating a group project or a project in general for the whole class. Easily accessible, I know you're going to come back to me on that one. Easily accessible, yes, we've had loads of issues with Wi-Fi, connectivity, you name it. I was just checking, fingers crossed that the connectivity would be okay here, and it should be, but when technology comes around, Murphy's really busy. So yes, there are issues. Sometimes when we were online through the pandemic, we're still in the pandemic, but through the lockdowns, sometimes the learners, for whatever reason, just couldn't engage because their connectivity kept dropping, their Wi-Fi and things like that. But that's why then you upload and sometimes even record your own lesson and put it up on whatever platform you use, be it Moodle, be it Teams, and that's how you make it more accessible if it can't be done synchronously, and is obviously flexible. Okay. Now, key aspects when it comes to the flipped classroom. I like this picture because it shows what's going on out of the class and in class. Now, there are instances, because it can happen, that the flipped classroom cannot actually happen because maybe there isn't that much connectivity or accessibility in terms of getting online from wherever the person is doing the research or studying. And so there is such a thing called in-class flipped classroom, okay, which is not exactly the same thing as this in-class learning component, okay? This in-class learning component has to do with having been able to prepare, do your research, watch videos, watch a lesson, you record it, or you send links to YouTube or from TED Talks, whatever. And then you do the questions and answers, expand the theory, the practice, or whatever in class. But as I said, they can happen that before the actual in-class activities, you have to do an in-class flipped classroom. In other words, when you come in, when the students come to class, they can you can give some time for them to do that research that other learners have had the chance to do at home or wherever they were. And you can, in the meantime, while you're doing that, then you can work with the other people that have already done that. Okay. So I've here some ways to introduce a lesson by watching a video. Now you can record yourself. Some people don't mind doing that. A lot of the times I personally look for information. I love doing research, being just leave me in a library. I don't mind, just feed me and I'll be as happy as Larry. But I also nowadays obviously do a lot more research online. So you can go to YouTube, comb it really finely, go to TED Talks. Again, you don't have to comment as finely because everything is pretty much high quality there. Or you can, there are online, you have Potoons that people have created. Now I leave it there. And as I say, some of you might be familiar with this term, some of you not. Audacity, it's another way to record videos. And today is Thursday. So last Tuesday, we had a colleague, Patrick, who gave us a second run about how to use Audacity. Yet again, this is in case you want to be proactive and record yourself. You can record yourself with the PowerPoint as well, as you know, and all the rest of it. But you have those tools there, okay? And if you don't want to do that, you can just go online and go through YouTube or TED Talks, for example. What's the incentive? Okay, the incentive is that if you do read and do your research and collect your resources, then you know where you're at. You know how much you have understood, what your questions you have. You come to class, you interact with your colleagues, with your classmates, or you ask your questions, right? One way you can assess their understanding once, even before class, is by putting links to quizzes that you can create, okay? True or false or close, it depends on the level, obviously, the level of English. as I said, my favorite would be Kahoot, and they love it. I mean, I have to really refrain the, I've stopped that routine. We used to have 2 or 3 Kahoots on a Friday in a particular class that I have twice a week, because they loved it. They even I even suggested one day, okay, you like Kahoots, okay, you're going to create one yourselves, and it was actually really, really helpful, because, and they loved it because they connected with each other. They worked in pairs and then in threes, and then they went over things that they found challenging, and by going over them and creating the question that would be answered in a multiple choice of true or false, then that helped them remember things even better. So it was brilliant. Or you can do a writing task with them. If you use Moodle, then there is usually a form that you can click on. If you use Teams, they can go to the general channel. I tell my learners that, look, if you don't want to put it in public, you can go through the chat, and it's only between you and me on the wall. And there as well is, by doing all of this before the actual class, be it online or be it face-to-face, they can work on their higher level cognitive skills. And here's when I can show you what happens, okay? So what is our job as teachers with regards to the flipped classroom? We coach, we advise, we are better able to see where their mistakes are, okay? And even the learners actually will find it, they could think, they might find out, oh, I thought I had this clear, but now come to think of it, it's not as clear as I thought it was, whatever. We record lectures, or we research for videos, and we prepare a lot of stuff, obviously. I call it the feed the monster. Prepare a lot of stuff for class, for out of class and for in class. But this is the way I put it. I like to see the bottle half full. So yes, it's time consuming. Well, once you have it, it's there. So for those students who have come to class later on, and once they have their LCDB email address, they can interact with Teams. In the meantime, they come as guests, but they can't interact with whatever is uploaded on Teams, and say, look, we've covered all of this. Go back and in your own time. And when you come across something you don't get, just come back to me and we'll work on that. You can message me through the chat, or you can just email me, or, next time we have class, whether it's there on campus or online, just let me know. And nobody shies away, which is brilliant. So the lecturing side of things happens in this list of videos and texts that they have to watch or look at. There's no person standing in front of them like some other teachers in secondary would do, read through the book. Not such a thing, okay? And so now what happens though is that the learners are more aware, or should become more aware, that they're really responsible for their learning. If you do all of these pre-tasks, then you'll be on top and you'll know where you stand, okay? They control their learning. They know how much they need to go over things or not. What's the scenario in a typical classroom? They are in class, some of them, information goes over their heads, and some other ones are bored stiff because they already know. And you spend longer in some things that some people don't need to, and not as much time as other people need. So that's why the flipped classroom is it's one of the positive aspects. They control their learning, and they spend as long or as little as they need. They're more independent. Yeah, they have to get used to becoming more independent. It's more or less like saying the ball is in their courtyard. Okay, they're able to prepare their own questions with a lot of thinking prior to come into class. They collaborate with other learners, not only with yourself, but especially with other learners, and they test their skills. Okay, so here is one of my favorite pyramids. This is an updated version. As you can see, the very top is creating. In the previous one, if you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, it said synthesizing, which was created by Howard Gardner of the multiple intelligences. So one of the questions that I put up there on Padlet was, what challenges do you meet? And I remember one of them was literacy, this and the other. Of course, when you're learning a language, You have to have the memory to remember the vocabulary, the structures, you name it. Okay. Some people memorize just by looking at something pretty easily. Some other people need to go through it. Okay. And that's why class time is enhanced by doing all of those tasks beforehand, because then they have time to put it into practice and to see what works and what doesn't work. So while they're doing the pre-tasks, they're working on their memorization of not verbatim or by heart, but to remember what things they've covered. It gives them time to understand, and then when they come to class is when we apply it, we try and analyze it, we evaluate whether we're right or wrong, etc., and then it's where, okay, that's the time now when we create something. Okay, this is not a filling the gaps, this is not me answering questions, this is me creating something. Okay, I am going to ask you a question now that nobody else has asked you before. Okay, so this is I like this picture of to show the idea of the flipped classroom, big emphasis on motivation. Okay, and all the things that I've told you already that we can do with the visual presentation, comprehension, with quizzes, or you can lead a discussion, you can throw in a topic, and all of this way before we come to class, so they have had time to go over it. To if you click, I add a lot of exercises with links, so they have an instant feedback. So there are exercises where they know they're right or wrong, and I have a lot of learners that are perfectionists, so if they don't get 100%, they'll do it all over again. Okay, so which is great. I can't tell them please don't do that. No, because you want them to get it right, and for some reason they challenge themselves, but in a positive way, without getting frustrated about it. So let's go on stage, and this is an example of an A2 class. Okay, going over the present simple versus the present continuous. A lot of languages coming into English, they wouldn't be, if they're starting obviously at an early stage, they might not be aware of how different simple versus continuous or progressive is in the use of the English language, because in other languages they might use the same tense. So I always say one thing is to being asked, what do you do, as opposed to what are you doing? Okay, so what would be the pre-class activities to do? Well, you'll have the revision of the rules, when to use the present, when to use the present simple as opposed to the continuous. Find time expressions like nowadays, at this time, at this moment, these days. List, a typo there, list of sentences. Okay, so what they do is they write down, you have sentences there, and you tell them, okay, one of those, for example, is true, or maybe two are right and two are wrong, and they have to check why. Okay, and then they can have also dialogues or fill in the blanks. That's a typical exercise that we've had, we see in a lot of course books. Okay, so this is once we are revising the rules. So we come to the class scenario. Okay, and we can suggest, why don't you write 4 sentences about yourselves or your family or your friends, something they're familiar with. Write 4 sentences, 2 are true and 2 are false, and then exchange with your classmate, whether they're online or not, it doesn't really matter. You can create breakout rooms if you're confident and you're able to do it, or just there live. And the statements, we are presuming that have been already checked and the statements are correct, but then they have to decide, oh yes, your father is a cook. No, he's not. Oh yes, he is. And this brings it down to short answers in English as well, a good revision. They can play a game afterwards. It all depends on how much time we have. And well, I opened the I opened the next thing there, but as you can see, I put in capital letters, be creative. In other words, you have reached the tip of the pyramid and the top of the pyramid, go for it. An example of a B2 level, in this case, rather than a grammar item, vocabulary. Okay, so you can choose a topic, and I'm going to throw in procrastination, which is an international thing. So procrastination, a crossword maybe, and by the time they have all the boxes filled in, there might be a word to find out at the bottom. Okay, and the word to be found would be procrastination. But in the meantime, they have worked with words that are linked to procrastination, be it postpone, instantly, deadline, trigger, anything. It doesn't have to be a verb, an adverb, a noun, anything that is linked to the vocabulary that we would use when we talk about procrastination. We have a video, somebody talking about procrastination, okay? And when we come to class, then there is a discussion, okay? And the typical question could be, you know, who procrastinates? And more often than not, everybody does. So they can complete sentences by using those words that we have, they have looked at already, become familiarized with in the pre-class. As I said, distraction, delay, any of those, okay, is the time to put them into a sentence. They can watch the video again, and they can talk about it in more, you know, they can expand on it. And then last activity could be choose the best sentence that best suit whatever is being discussed. Okay, all of this again has to do with how much time you can allot to these new topics. So sometimes a class will do, class time, you know, one class will do, but some other times it could you might need 2 or 3 classes. Okay, and last one is at C1 level, and of course things get a little bit more complicated, and we're putting together sounds, verbs, and vocabulary together. Sound verbs, decide, as it says here, which sounds are connected to parts of the body. So we have smack, hand, slurp, mouth, swallow, throat. Okay. Then we complete sentences by using these verbs, depending on what we have in the sentence. Then we can have also, as the pre-class activities, looking at pictures with different sounds. Now, these different sounds could be, you have a picture and you have maybe a tick, creak, drip. Okay, so you have a tap with water, bing there, so there's going to be drip. So you match the picture with the word. And again, they have to look things up themselves, or they could have it already in those pictures. Okay, and then put it into practice by, again, before going to class, choose 5 verbs and write sentences. Okay, like the tap in the sink in the kitchen is always dripping, for example. Okay, and then when it comes into the in-class activities, a short task with the various sounds that we hear every day. Okay, I once taught what you call it, kinder music, and the kids, the children were quite young, and we were nannies in one of the main streets. So it was quite, you know, there was quite a lot of sound coming out, and it was really, I found it really interesting to see, well, for the first time, those kids that were quite, you know, obviously like kids, you know, active and interactive, and say, okay, now listen carefully. What do you hear? And that was to see how they listen to things in general. Obviously, the end result was going to be with regards to music, but I had never seen kids so quiet listening to what was going on outside. And they would say, oh, that's a car. Oh, that's a person talking. Similar. Okay, so what do you hear? This morning, earlier on, there was banging outside because they were doing something next door. So all of these things. And it's C1, so a lot of the words they should know already, and some of them, they will be new to them. Before watching the video, okay, I'm going to throw in another word, misophonia. Misophonia. You can ask, what do you think misophonia is? If anybody is familiarized with the term phonia and what that means, like telephone or megaphone or anything to do with phone. Sound, yep, exactly. We go into that. We'll see. Then we watch a video and let's see how many we'll write. It turns out that misophonia is sounds that you find irritating. So I'm very misophonic myself. So then is when you can throw in expressions such as pet peeve, unbearable, drive somebody nuts, cringe, annoy. So hence the vocabulary side of things. So we have sounds that we might or might not be familiar with yet, how to put it into verbs, and then the vocabulary that goes with it in general, both verbs and nouns and adverbs. So here, this is my second last slide. As I said, for example, in terms of resources, and this is suggestions, YouTube, TED, I find TED really, really interesting, and everybody else does, I believe. And you have, it used to be 20-minute slots of talks, but now, as you know, there are shorter versions of it. Could be as short as 2 minutes something, and maybe as long as 5 or something. So there's always something that, you know, that you can find. With regards to the smartphone apps, now there's one there that is not mentioned. There were, when you go and Google this, you're going to find loads of these. I chose this one because it was vertical like that. Is it that'll fit in nicely there? There is one that is not mentioned there. Mondly. Mondly is just using my husband as an example. He did Duolingo before, but now he told me he came across Mondly and he finds it very, very even better. Mondly, as in Mondly. The only thing is that you just have to make sure that you do some exercise. It takes barely 5 minutes a day within the 24 hours. Otherwise, as it happened to him, he started using Mondly before we went to Hungary for a quick holiday. So I decided to let's have a go at a bit of Hungarian, which was one of the hardest languages in the world. So he started with Mondly, and one day we kind of got carried away, and it was 24 hours, and he had to start back to the beginning, which is no harm. It was good revision. And e-learning platforms, well, I myself have done some Future Learn. I've been a student with that. Some, I think Coursera as well have done, Udacity, you name it. Look, this is just an example of many other e-learning platforms that you can use. Okay. This is meant to be more touch and base with all of this. So this is our lovely English language there in front of us, and all the things, not just in English, that we have to look at when we're teaching. So that's me, it in terms of today's topic.
Oh, Anna, thanks a million. So many tips and suggestions and resources and examples there are fantastic. Maybe, Anna, we look at the questions. And so if anyone has a question or a suggestion, please type it in now and Anna can deal with it. Anna, you see there's something there from, can you see the chat box from Patricia
I'm going to open it now. Yeah. Oh, that's a very long. Oh, hi, Patricia.
Hi, I can actually just come in. I was just saying that Anna has such good points there. I was just thinking it really relates to what I worked with Anna in SDL CTV, and it just really relates to UDL and things like that. And I've been teaching ESOL. I work in professional learning development now, but I've been teaching ESOL for the last 7 years. And I just think the flipped classroom really works with the way that learners themselves, they can use the multiple means of representation where they can learn, prepare for classes. I think ESOL learners themselves, from the feedback I've been teaching anywhere from level 1 up to level 5, and especially the higher levels, level 3s and 4s and 5s, they like to prepare, have the materials before they come to the class. And then within the classroom, what happens when, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Someone said?
Yeah,
okay, but within the classroom then, they tend to like to have a more active classroom and an engaging classroom where they can actually collaborate together and do some of the tasks like Anna was saying. They don't like to be listening to really PowerPoints or spending a half an hour or 40 minutes in the class on a PowerPoint. ESOL learners, I've got that feedback myself, that they don't like to be listening to that. They prefer to see the PowerPoint previously and then be doing activities and focusing on their grammar. And fun activities and collaborate together. That's what I find myself. So I thought Anna, that was just so good. The apps and the Audacity as well. I haven't tried it myself yet, but I think that would be brilliant for ESOL learners, because I don't know if anyone else has the same problem. I can't find any anything with, if you, Joe, are trying to do listening for ESOL learners. Can you find anything that has someone speaking in Irish because with an Irish accent?
You know what I
Because
used to
it's
do?
English.
You know what I used to do, Patricia, because I another life. I have many, apart from strings in my bow, I have other lives as well, working with people that have learning difficulties. I ended up using material with American accent, which was the closest I could get to Irish,
Okay.
because
Yes.
the problem was, as you know, if we deal with British English, again, nothing wrong with it as such, the R's are gone. So
Yes.
you're dealing with somebody that may not be able to process the listening, but if on top of everything else, they have to deal with the silent R's and the schwas, if you know what I mean by the schwas, then it only adds an extra challenge that we are not really working on. So I thought, hang on a minute, what's the next best thing to roll R's? American English, for historical reasons, obviously. And thank God we had that. But I did pursue in the past if we could get something Irish, and I'm going way, way, way back, 20 odd years here in Ireland. When I started, well, I mean, I've been in Ireland nearly 27 years now, but I was told that whatever came to Ireland had to come, even if it was created in the US, it would go from the US into the UK. The UK, we made it English, British English, shall we say, as a term. And then it would come into Ireland via the British English. We could never get anything directly from the United States. So when I would go to the US, I would get stuff there, you know, CDs, the old traditional CDs, and I would play them on my laptop. Now you can't, we don't normally have, you know, a CD slot or whatever, but you know, you cannot, well, no, that's what I did. Yeah.
That's really good to know, because it's very difficult, I find, even just if you go to like the Cambridge, or if you're looking up some of the listening pieces, it's all in English, Joe, the English accent, which I said there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just very hard to get a listening exercise that's with an Irish accent, and they want to hear the Irish accent because they're working with people that have the Irish accent and they want to be able to understand it.
Exactly.
Like that's really,
exactly.
So,
Patricia,
that is great.
Patricia, there is a good website called Listen Here. And I've just put it into the chat function. It's Language and Integration Skills for Life by Emer Gilmartin. She's based in Trinity College, and she's recorded voices of Irish people reading stories, etc. So
brilliant.
She's kind of a work in progress, because she's doing it on her own, and so, but it's well worth checking out.
Okay, great. Thanks a million. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Patricia.
Has anyone else tried the flipped classroom in ESOL or in literacy and found any benefits, or any comments or any suggestions for the rest of us? Any other questions for Anna before we wrap up?
I managed to finish it, to have the exact 10 minutes. I don't know how I did it. I wasn't looking at, I only looked at my phone there twice, and I said, wow, what was it, 1350? So, God, if I'd done it on purpose, it wouldn't have.
Oh, there's Kathy Orr saying Phoenix FM.
Yes.
Kathy, could you just unmute for a second? Give us a line on that, please.
Sorry, I'll try and send the link. I'll try and find it now and put it in the chat. Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's like a little radio series. But a lot of the time I just try and find Irish television, or, you know, Irish YouTube clips, and make them into listening exercises. So at least it's real life. But
yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
try and find the link now. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just looking here.
I have tried that, Kathy. Sorry, this is Trish again. I've tried that, Kathy, and I've tried when I was with my level 5 with the listening, and they had to listen to prime time. God, but they did try. I gave them a trial first, because prime time is very quick. Joe is a piece on the water charges, and they were like, oh my God, when they saw it first, they're like, oh my God, how fast it's going. But once they watched it again, it's prep work. once they watched it once or twice over, and then I give them something similar. Again, they like to prepare, and then I give them something similar. So
I
that
find
was level 5 now.
I was looking at a comment there. Again, I read it over, but I read it again while you were talking there, Patricia. It is true that a lot of learners, I have met so many learners, whether they were learning whatever language, that the first thing they said to me is, "Oh, I'm not good at language. I never have been." And I don't throw the towel. It takes me a lot of time to eventually throw the towel if I do, which I don't think I've ever done. It's the way, the goodness about the flipped classroom. It's the fact that you have the time. I mean, when I was studying for the NCI, in my head, I say, oh, I'm going to do a little bit every day. That never ever happened because life comes in the way and work and all the rest of it. But whenever I dealt with it, I dealt it in my own time. So if I want to spend some time going over at the weekend or whatever, it doesn't really matter. I spent as little as I needed. But the fact that you don't have the pressure of, oh, there are other people in class, I'm not going to raise my hand because, you know, other people might know about it, and, you know, I don't want to disturb anybody, you know, that I think of guilt, to kind of like, oh no, I'll figure it out. This allows you to have all of that background work, and then when you come to class, it builds up, you know, your confidence builds up, and then you become less and less shy about asking, you know, a question, because you realize that other people are on the same boat as you are. And some people have taken 1 hour to get something, to figure something out. Some other people take 45 minutes, some other take 2 hours. That's their own thing, but you don't feel, oh, that person is better than me because whatever. At the end of the day, what matters is that we know what we need to know. It doesn't matter how long it's taken us. I haven't been in anybody's way. So.
Right. Thanks a million. I see Kathy Orr has typed in the Phoenix FM link. So if anyone wants to have a look at that, it's English for Living from Phoenix FM. So if I'll just see on the chat, are there any other questions? Carmel, thanks. Carmel Blair says, breaking news English website has listening at 5 different speeds. It's not an Irish accent, but easy to understand. The articles are graded. Oh, that would be really helpful. Graded, easy and difficult. Mm-hmm. Okay, that would really be helpful now.
There is more and more stuff coming out. It's really hard to keep up with. You know, there are so many things that I learned that I've learned the last 2 years in terms of apps and stuff, that I have to tell myself, look, you can only do so much with the people that you have. You can't be applying everything with everybody because it wouldn't suit. You just have to pick and choose. But you know, you don't have to have a big bowl of fruit, just a smaller bowl with fewer items and work with them. And then once you're happy with that, you know, add some more. But, you know, it's very important not to feel overwhelmed about having to use everything, which is what I have to keep reminding myself, because I want to do everything.
Okay. On that note, we're going to have to wrap it up. And once again, I want to extend a big thank you to Ana Marques. Ana, that was really instructive. A lot of resources, a lot of ideas, a lot of tips, and a good explanation of what the flipped classroom is and how to operate it. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And as I say, I will send on Anna's presentation to everybody later this afternoon. So thanks everyone, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Bye.
Thank you.